I stood backstage at the Georgia Tech auditorium, the heavy velvet curtains muffling the applause for the preceding candidate, feeling the weight of 6 years. 6 years of solvents, CAD designs, pilot studies, and more failed experiments than I cared to count, pressing down on me, encapsulated in the stiff, black doctoral gown I wore. It was 3 p.m. on a sweltering Saturday in May, the culmination of my life's work, defending my Ph.D. in chemical engineering, transitioning from Serafina Hayes, student, to Dr. Serafina Hayes, scientist. I scanned the first rows through a gap in the curtain, looking for the reserved seats. 5 chairs, designated with a small card, the Hayes family. They were empty. A sick, familiar drop hit my stomach, the kind of emotional freefall I'd learned to dread. Then I saw Chloe, my closest friend and former lab partner, waving frantically from the third row, her parents beside her holding a ridiculous, brightly colored poster that read, "Congrats, Dr. Hayes. Now go save the planet." They'd driven 6 hours from Savannah to be here. 6 hours for a ceremony the people who signed my birth certificate couldn't manage 6 miles for? My phone vibrated in the pocket of my gown, a group text. I knew I shouldn't look. Not now, just minutes before the chair of the engineering department introduced me, but the compulsion was too strong. It was a picture sent by my sister, Penelope, featuring a wide, slightly drunk selfie. Behind her, my mother, Genevieve, was perfectly coiffed, laughing beside my father, Arthur, whose signature developer's smile was wide and satisfied. Elias, my golden brother, stood beaming in a hard hat, a shiny silver shovel propped against his custom suit. The backdrop made the blood drain from my face, a massive sun-drenched lot dominated by a gleaming 5-story banner declaring, "Elias Hayes, the future of Midtown living." It was his groundbreaking ceremony. The caption beneath Penelope's photo read, "Best party ever. Wish you were here, Sarah. #Hayes Legacy," followed by 3 champagne flute emojis. I scrolled back through the text. November, when I'd sent the formal invitations with "Save the date" embossed in gold. Genevieve's reply, "Of course, darling, wouldn't miss it for the world." Arthur, "So proud, kiddo, mark it down." Elias, "Can't wait to celebrate, Dr. Sarah." Penelope, "Already planning my outfit. This is huge." My hands started to shake. I tapped Arthur's contact and called immediately. The phone rang, then was picked up amidst a roar of distant applause and brass band music. "Serafina, I can't talk. The mayor just arrived to turn the first shovel. I must go." The line went dead. The department chair's voice boomed over the speakers. "We now welcome Serafina Hayes, candidate for Doctor of Philosophy in Chemical Engineering." My legs felt disconnected from my body as I walked onto the stage. The familiar pattern played in my head like a toxic loop. Elias's $20 million commercial project, bankrolled by Arthur, required his family's presence. My Ph.D., the highest academic degree I could earn, was apparently just a ceremony. I remember being 19, begging Arthur for a few $100s for specialty software required for a complex thermodynamics course. He'd told me to manage my budget better while simultaneously gifting Elias a fully restored vintage Mustang for landing an internship at a low-level financial firm that paid more than my stipend. My state-level science fair win at 16 earned a distant, "That's nice, dear," from Genevieve, while she hosted an elaborate garden party to celebrate Elias making regional football captain. The contrast was a razor blade to my carefully constructed emotional shield. As I walked across the stage and accepted the diploma tube, Chloe's family erupted in cheers, her mother openly wiping tears. I looked out at the 5 empty seats and understood this wasn't a scheduling conflict. This was a statement. I was irrelevant. Later, sitting in my beat-up sedan, the graduation gown hot and suffocating, I pulled out the original list of graduation announcement addresses. The one I'd held the longest was addressed to Grandma Vivian. Gone 5 years now, but the only person who ever saw my accomplishments as something magnificent, not something competitive. She'd listened to me ramble about polymer structures and catalysis with focused, genuine interest, calling me her brilliant girl. The name Vivian felt solid and true, unlike the hollow pretense of haze.
Driving toward my cramped apartment, toward the life I now needed to dismantle, the text I'd read 6 months ago during the planning phase flashed back with painful clarity. Genevieve's email buried deep in my inbox. Serafina, you must understand. This groundbreaking isn't just a party. Key investors and city officials will be there. This is a critical opportunity for Elias's long-term future. Your defense, well, it's just a ceremony, isn't it? Just a ceremony. 6 years of my life reduced to a footnote so my brother could schmooze with politicians. The rage was immediate, scalding and purifying. 2 days later, I was at the Fulton County Courthouse. The fluorescent lights buzzed over the reception desk as I filed the paperwork. I walked out 2 hours later, feeling a lightness I hadn't known I was missing. I was no longer Serafina Hayes. I was Serafina Hayes Vivian. The name tasted like freedom and smelled like the new life I was already driving toward. Portland, Oregon. 2,800 miles away, a place where the Hayes name meant nothing, and my merit meant everything. I packed only what mattered: my research journals, my diploma, and Grandma Vivian's recipe box. Everything else, family photos, the Christmas ornament with the Hayes name painted on it, and the relentless ghost of my parents' disapproval, went into the dumpster. I sent no warning, no explanation. They'd find out when the apartment lease expired and my number went dead. I hit the road before sunrise, driving toward a coast where I could finally, truly breathe. The drive across the country was a forced detoxification. The first 1,000 miles, stretching across the dusty plains of Texas and Oklahoma, were a blur of ugly, gasping sobs. I was mourning a family that had never existed, grieving the loss of hope that they might someday choose me. I pulled over multiple times, clinging to the steering wheel of my overloaded sedan, trying to reassemble the fragments of my identity. But somewhere in the vast expanse of Wyoming, the crying stopped. I deleted the old family photo from my phone lock screen, the one where we were all posing stiffly under Arthur's massive chandelier, pretending to be a cohesive unit, and replaced it with a minimalist landscape. The static from the Atlanta classic rock station I'd been listening to finally cut out completely near Idaho, and instead of searching for new music, I plugged in a complex chemical engineering podcast discussing fluid dynamics in sustainable energy systems. The technical, methodical discussion about flow rates and efficiency ratios was exactly what I needed. No drama, no emotional subterfuge, just science and logic. By the time the jagged peaks of the Cascades appeared on the horizon, the emotional debris was cleared. My hands were steady on the wheel, my jaw set. The rearview mirror was just that, a view of the past, not a roadmap. When the "Welcome to Oregon" sign appeared, I didn't feel lonely. I felt fiercely solitary and completely in control. The Hayes family's absence wasn't a wound anymore. It was the blessed quiet after a bomb blast. I merged onto the highway toward Portland State University, where I'd secured a low-level research fellowship focused on regional water purification, a quiet, demanding start far away from the toxic, competitive world of big city real estate development. The night I arrived, the small studio apartment felt vast, the silence echoing off the bare walls, amplifying the immense weight of my solitude. Did I do the right thing? The question was a tidal force, threatening to drag me back to the familiar, albeit painful, shore of Atlanta. My old phone lay on the counter, still holding the contact for Genevieve. One call, one weak apology. "I'm sorry I overreacted. I know Elias's career is important." And I could potentially go back to being the invisible Hayes daughter. My thumb hovered over the contact. The isolation was agonizing. There was no Chloe here, no familiar professors, just me and the crushing responsibility of building a life from absolute zero. Just as I was about to press the call button, my new phone, the one with my professional email, lit up on the coffee table.
It was from the lead consultant at the Cascadia Environmental Agency. "Welcome to the team, Dr. Hayes Vivian. Your contract starts Monday, 8 a.m. Please report to third floor of the Water Resources Building. We are excited for your expertise in water systems modeling."
I stared at the screen. Dr. Hayes Vivian. Not Hayes, Vivian. They expected me, under my chosen name, to show up and use my specialized knowledge to solve real, technical problems. This wasn't a fantasy I'd cooked up in a fit of rage. It was a professional reality. They had printed a keycard with my name. They trusted me. I powered down the old phone and dropped it into a box marked for the recycling bin. Then I typed my response to the CEA, the signature line feeling solid, undeniable. Sincerely, Dr. Serafina Hayes Vivian. My next email was to Georgia Tech's registrar's office, attaching the court-ordered name change documents. An hour later came the confirmation. Your records have been updated. Your reprinted diploma will reflect your current legal name, Serafina Hayes Vivian. Congratulations on your degree, Doctor. Dr. Vivian. Even from an anonymous registrar, the name carried an earned weight the Hayes name never had. It didn't come with the baggage of being compared to Elias or measured against Arthur's financial success. I placed a framed photo of Grandma Vivian on the small desk I'd set up, her kind face beaming up at me. Tomorrow, I'd unpack the research and the textbooks. Monday, I'd report to the CEA as a professional, ready to build a life based on technical merit. The filters were set on my email, the phone numbers blocked. I was utterly alone, but the isolation was less like a punishment and more like a fortress. 6 months passed. I was deep into a complex project modeling the impact of urban runoff on the Willamette River when a LinkedIn message notification popped up. Message from Elias Hayes. A year ago, this would have sent me spiraling. Now I read it with the clinical disinterest I reserved for equipment calibration reports. "Mom is devastated that you changed your name. This is so selfish. You're hurting the entire family with this childish tantrum. Dad had to hire a private investigator because we thought you were dead. How could you do this to us?" I read the text twice. Then, without a tremor, I clicked Block User and returned to my water quality data. The words that once held the power of a sledgehammer now felt like a weak spray from a hose. For the first time, I was completely immune to the Hayes family's emotional blackmail. I was too busy working meaningful, exhausting, and clean 14-hour days to care. My first year in Portland was brutal in every way, but the one that mattered. I was finally free to be competent without having to fight for it. My life had settled into a steady, challenging rhythm at the Cascadia Environmental Agency, far away from the manufactured chaos of Atlanta. I was focused, professional, and known only as Dr. Hayes Vivian, the expert in predictive modeling. That's how I was functioning when the crisis case landed on my desk one Thursday morning in March. A major regional dairy farm supplying 3 states was facing catastrophic failure of its biodigester system. The waste processing was completely stalling, leading to severe EPA compliance issues and an imminent environmental disaster. The senior team was stumped. "We've run every test, doctor," the field coordinator told me, gesturing helplessly at the reams of data. "The bacterial counts are stable, the temperature is right, but the gas yield is flatlining. It's behaving like a chemical inhibitor is present, but we can't find the source." I spent the next 48 hours immersed in the data, cross-referencing every chemical used on the farm, feed additives, cleaning agents, even the specific grade of steel in the reactor walls, against obscure chemical inhibition literature. At 3:30 a.m. on Saturday, buried in an outdated Polish engineering journal, I found it. A rare 1-in-a-million interaction between a seemingly innocuous trace mineral added to the cattle feed and a specific high-efficiency polymer used to line the digester tanks. The combination created an ionic bond that effectively shut down the necessary anaerobic conversion pathway, mimicking equipment failure while being completely reversible with a targeted enzymatic flush. I arrived at the emergency briefing terrified but certain, clutching my printouts and diagrams. When the lead consultant called for my input, my voice shook slightly as I presented my findings.
I believe we're looking at a previously undocumented mineral-polymer interaction. The reaction mimics a total system crash, but is fundamentally a kinetic stall due to an enzyme block, not a bacterial crash.
The silence in the conference room stretched for what felt like a minute. The lead consultant, a notoriously demanding woman who rarely showed emotion, stared at my notes. "Show me the literature, doctor." I handed over the highlighted pages. She read them silently while the entire team waited. Finally, she looked up. "Good work, Dr. Hayes Vivian. You just saved a farm and avoided a major regional water catastrophe." That quiet, earned validation resonated through my chest with more power than any standing ovation Arthur or Genevieve ever orchestrated for Elias. This praise was specific, technical, and real, coming from someone who respected my competence, not someone trying to manipulate my compliance. The farm recovered fully after we implemented the flushing protocol. 3 weeks later, a thank you gift arrived at the office. A beautiful, local wooden cutting board inscribed to Dr. Hayes Vivian and the CEA Angels. I kept it taped above my desk. I met Caleb Martinez at the most unlikely event, an algorithmic ethics symposium, held in a windowless hotel ballroom. He was presenting his research on data modeling bias in sustainable energy resource allocation. During the Q&A, I raised my hand. "Your methodology assumes a random distribution of confounding variables, but the historical data you're using is precisely what generated the bias in the first place. You're measuring the problem with the same inherently flawed tool that created it." The room went silent. Caleb looked at me for a long moment, then smiled. A genuine, disarming grin. "You are absolutely right. The circular logic is embarrassingly obvious now that you've pointed it out." He didn't argue or try to minimize my critique. He simply accepted it. After the session, he found me at the coffee station. "You were correct about the data bias," he said, handing me a fresh cup. "I'm Caleb. Can I buy you dinner so you can tell me what else I'm wrong about?" His respect for my intellect was a revelation. Elias used to argue with me to win. Arthur dismissed my opinions before I finished speaking. Caleb wanted to hear more. "I'm Serafina," I said, accepting the coffee. "And yes, you can buy me dinner, but fair warning, I have strong opinions about everything from chemical reactors to sustainable city planning." "Perfect," he said. "So do I. This should be interesting." 6 months later, Caleb watched me pace around our shared apartment, muttering engineering terminology while preparing for a major presentation to the Portland City Council about a new wastewater filtering protocol I'd designed. I was stressed, scattered, completely in my own head. He didn't offer empty reassurances or tell me to calm down. Instead, he quietly brought me coffee and a sandwich I'd forgotten to eat. He smiled and nodded as a sign that he was always here, silently witnessing my efforts. I stopped pacing and looked at him. The memory of 16-year-old me alone with my state science fair trophy flashed in my mind. This quiet, steadfast support was the validation I had been seeking my entire life. It wasn't about flashy celebrations or networking opportunities. It was about someone making space for me to succeed. That night, as I presented my research to a room full of city administrators and engineers, I felt something new. Complete confidence in my own professional worth, independent of anyone else's approval. The foundation was solid now. Everything I built from here would be entirely mine.
The CEO had called me into his office, and my stomach had dropped, expecting a major error report. "Serafina, sit down. The board approved your promotion to lead consultant for predictive modeling. Congratulations. 4 years of proving my worth, one complex case at a time, culminated in those simple words. I still can't believe it," I told Chloe, sinking into my ergonomic chair. "The CEO said my work on the biodigester protocol alone justified the promotion, and the new Willamette River purification model? Game-changing." Chloe grinned. "That's what real achievement feels like, Sarah. Saving ecosystems, not collecting empty praises to impress people who couldn't care less."
My phone buzzed with a text from Caleb, who was currently presenting his latest sustainable energy research at a conference in Copenhagen. Proud of you, lead consultant Vivian. Can't wait to celebrate properly when I get home tomorrow. Dinner reservations at that ridiculous French place you love. The simplicity of his support still caught me off guard. No competition, no conditions, no need to diminish my success to make room for his ego. You know what's strange? I confided, setting the phone down. I keep waiting for the other shoe to drop, for someone to say this promotion was a mistake. That's the Hayes programming talking, she said softly. You spent your whole life believing you had to earn love through perfect performance, but even a Ph.D. wasn't enough for them. She was right, but something had fundamentally shifted. My colleagues celebrated my technical victories without comparing them to Elias's building heights. My research papers earned recognition based solely on their merit. I had published 5 major papers this year, presented at 3 international conferences, and led the implementation of a new protocol that reduced regional water contamination alerts by 22%. And nobody minimized those achievements. Nobody suggested I was showing off or getting too big for my britches. Nobody threw a rival groundbreaking party to steal attention from my success. Welcome to what normal, earned support feels like, Chloe said, squeezing my hand. Through the window, I watched a young engineer hurry across the park, backpack flapping behind her, probably rushing to solve her own complex problem. 4 years ago, that was me, desperate to prove my competence. Now, I was the one people came to for answers. My computer chimed with an email notification. The sender's name made my breath hitch. Genevieve Hayes. Chloe noticed my face change. What is it? I stared at the subject line. Your engagement announcement. Below it, my email filter had automatically sorted the message into a folder labeled Blocked Senders, Auto Delete. The timing was pitch perfect. Genevieve had discovered my engagement to Caleb through mutual Atlanta acquaintances, saw photos of the winery venue we toured last week, and realized she wasn't consulted, informed, or included. I could picture her panic, the desperate realization that her daughter was marrying a brilliant research biologist and she was excluded from the family legacy narrative. My mother tried to email me about the wedding, I told Chloe, clicking on the folder to view the blocked message list. It went straight to my filters. Chloe's eyebrows shot up. Are you going to read it? I hovered the cursor over the email for a moment, then closed the folder without opening it. No. Whatever manipulation, whatever demand for inclusion she's typed up, it doesn't have an address anymore. The email would be automatically deleted in 30 days, unread. Genevieve's drama, her desperate attempt to insert herself into my biggest life moment, would disappear into the digital void without ever reaching me. This was the true victory. Not just that I built a successful career despite their neglect, but that their opinions and their panic no longer had the power to wound me. Caleb's text, my CEO's professional respect, Chloe's unwavering loyalty. This was what family felt like when it was chosen, rather than assigned. I deleted the notification and turned back to Chloe, leaning back in my leather chair. 4 years ago, that would have destroyed you, she observed quietly. 4 years ago, I was still performing for their approval. Now I'm living for my own.